Welcome in to the Paul Kuharsky podcast. I'm Paul Kuharsky of paulkuharsky.com. I like to say my name 3 times. I am at EDLEY'S in Berry Hill, my home base for most of my in-week podcasts. Smell it. It is delicious. I'm brought to you by EDLEY'S, of course, and as well as VIP Play, the place to be treated like a VIP, the premier betting experience. Pleased that you could join me before July 4th. A bad day in Titans history. Steve McNair was killed 16 years ago on Friday. And I spent the last couple days just digging through a lot of what I wrote and what Jim Wyatt wrote for the Tennessean about Steve McNair's career. We're not going to reminisce or relive the tragedy of Steve McNair. We're going to go through a lot about his career. And really, what I did is I clipped a lot of what he said. And so I'm going to recount a lot of what Steve McNair said about himself. About high moments and low moments in his career, and leave a lot of room here if you choose to join me in reminiscing about him. We'll see how long it goes. It may be regular length here, it may be shorter, but with Friday being an anniversary and a lot of people, I'm sure, writing a lot of stuff, I thought this was an appropriate way for us to remember him. I was talking we're part of 440 Network, I should have mentioned here. I was talking with my All-22 guys about that first game as the Titans at what was Adelphia Coliseum, and Steve McNair's first game leading the Tennessee Titans as opposed to the Tennessee Oilers, as opposed to the Houston Oilers. And remembering him getting booed during that game, which was a pretty damn good game by Steve McNair, and a pretty kind of quintessential Steve McNair game on September 12th, 1999. Titans against the Bengals. They led by 19, then they trailed 35-26. And Yancey Thigpen caught a pass and lost a fumble. McNair threw a pick, and he lost a fumble on a sack, and he sprained his ankle. And a decent share of the Adelphia Coliseum crowd, without Steve McNair's kind of toughness, resilience, and ability to bring a team back from a deficit, his clutchness gene not really established yet, wanted Neil O'Donnell in the game, and booed when McNair, with his ankle taped up, came back into that game. They weren't happy about it. He finished with 341 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. He led the team on 2 scoring drives for them to pull out a very important win that kind of set up their season, a very good season, a season that took them to the playoffs, obviously, and where he missed 5 games shortly thereafter, with O'Donnell having to play because McNair needed back surgery. That was the 6th best yardage game of his career. It wound up being. He only had 1 more game in his career with more touchdown throws. That was one of 15 Steve McNair games with 3 touchdowns. And defensive tackle Mike Jones said after that game, when he goes down, people need to start praying, not booing. McNair said, "It hurt me to see it, but if it worried me, it would worry the whole team. If I'm going to be the leader on this team, if I lay down just because someone booed me, then the whole team is going to lay down." Separately, he said, "I'm a fighter. Unless you break my leg, break my neck, I'm always going to be prepared to go out there. The disappointing thing is it's the first game of the season. I haven't played that much in the preseason, and the crowd booed me. But that gave me even more motivation to go out there and get the job done. I don't understand it. So this was the kind of game that McNair came to be admired for. Titans didn't blow out people on any kind of regular basis with Steve McNair at quarterback. He didn't regularly put up big passing numbers. The thing that he was loved for was his toughness, his ability to fight through an injury or multiple injuries, his ability to play without practicing, and his ability to get it done in the end. And what he did in this game was rallied them to a touchdown and a field goal that won this game. First game at Adelphia Coliseum in a season where they didn't lose at Adelphia Coliseum. And then there was a big debate in the city about, obviously you can boo a guy if you want to boo a guy, but should Nashville be booing a guy who just came back into the game when you were booing to lead the team to a win? There was definitely, at least for some people, I remember very vividly, a racial tone to some of it. I wanted the white guy and Neil O'Donnell, not the black guy, Steve McNair. I don't want to have a big argument about that. There was some of it there. And then there was a big element of apology. The next day, I think it was Monday, there were some signs, like yard signs pinned. There's a big grass median on Metro Center Boulevard that where the Titans headquarters is, and every player and every reporter and every coach, everybody that's going to the facility is driving by this on their way in, and there were some signs planted there. If not Monday, by the time this had been debated, Tuesday and Wednesday, that were apologetic about the booing. And then Hammock Publishing, a local publishing company, hired an airplane and flew an airplane over the practice facility that said, "Fly high, Steve," signed it, "Your fans." And so at least an element of the city realized, hey, that was not the right reaction by us. And especially in hindsight, considering what the guy just went and did after he got hurt, winning us the game, that he didn't deserve to be booed then. And there were times, of course, where Steve McNair, does he deserve to be booed? And he probably deserved to be booed. It was probably I didn't go look at the interception and the fumble. I'm sure there were bad plays. But in the context of that game, very good game by him, very good game by the team. Nashville, to a degree, learning the NFL, that the Titans weren't necessarily going to blow a team out start to finish. And not too many NFL games, not a high percentage of NFL games go that direction. You go east, and if the Vols had a lead like that, it's probably unlikely that they were going to give up a big comeback. But I think that was a big moment. And I think the way McNair handled it came to be a kind of a precursor to how things were going to go. Ed Henry, who is a religious participant in this podcast and all podcasts, do I think McNair had the career he had because of Fisher, or do I think his career would have been better with another coach? That's a good question. I think, Floyd Reese and Jeff Fisher together, giving McNair time at the beginning, drafted 96, didn't play, drafted 95, didn't really play in 95, 96, took over 97 and got slow, patient. Eddie George centered offense. It was an Eddie George centered offense really for most of his career, not so much in his MVP year and a little bit after that. But I think they handled him right. And I think, handling all the injuries and dealing with the quarterback that couldn't practice during the week, I think most coaches, would have had no choice but to deal with him in the same way. Maybe they would have been less patient. And so I think the Titans did well to be patient with him. But I certainly think Jeff Fisher was far closer to maximizing Steve McNair than hurting Steve McNair in any way, shape, or form. What other coaches would have done, I think it would have been a coach-by-coach basis. Vader Jaws. I continue to wonder, did McNair finish his career 1 yard short and an overtime victory in Super Bowl 34 from being in the Hall of Fame, or would he have needed to do more than win just one ring? I don't think that he is a Super Bowl win away from the Hall of Fame. I mean, Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls in spectacular fashion. Now, he was I hate to tab wins on quarterbacks. Wins are not a quarterback stat, really. But the Giants, under Eli Manning's leadership over a long career, were a 500 team. After a certain point, he was very much an average quarterback. He didn't come close to getting into the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility. And I think it's going to be a struggle for him. Some other people think, they didn't want him to be a first ballot guy, but they think he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Also, it's harder now, starting last year when the Hall of Fame changed the path and the voting structure for guys to get in. But I think McNair would. It's just, if you look at his contemporary quarterbacks, there are too many guys that rank ahead of him. Too many guys that rank ahead of him. Appreciate seeing you guys, Ed, Robert, Vader, Ben. Ben, glad that you made it live. And Ben enjoyed the recent episode of Elsewhere. For those of you who are in the habit of watching, I put out an edition of the podcast last week, which is my kind of change-up podcast, a personal essay, Elsewhere, and that was audio only. So if you haven't heard it, it's short. It's only about 12, 15 minutes. But I appreciate it if you go check that out on Apple, Spotify, or iHeart, and give it a like. Appreciate it. Let me know what you think. So on to my next chapter. I'm at EDLEY'S BBQ. I'm here in Franklin at Berry Farms. If you take the Paytonsville Road, exit off 65, head towards where all the restaurants and hotels and everything are. It's right there. Can't recommend the fried ribs enough. But everything on the menu is delicious. The service is fantastic. And the food just can't be beat. My family and I are hooked on the avocado plate. You can get any kind of meat you want on that. Absolutely delicious. Best looking avocado you're going to find in these parts. Just really, really fantastic food, fantastic service, fantastic people. Will Newman, who owns the whole operation, has been fantastic to me. You can come to Franklin and Berry Farms. You can go to the factory in Franklin, 5 Points in East Nashville, Sylvan Park, Donaldson, Gallatin, 12 South, Nolensville. Fried ribs, top of the list, but everything on the menu is fantastic. The brisket, unparalleled. Can't recommend it highly enough. They're good to me. Be good to them. I know most of you are regulars, but hit them up again. And if you're not, go out of your way to make a trip. I know a lot of you have plans to come into town for games and have already asked me, which one should you go to, which one's closest to the stadium. You can go to 12 South. You can go to Sylvan Park. Don't miss it. Ed Henry asks, was Steve the leader of the team or was it George? I mean, certainly both of them. But Eddie George, and I talked about this on a football show last week, minimized his role in memorializing Steve. It was Eddie George's team, and it was Eddie George's offense. And, Steve was not as outgoing and as fiery a personality. Not that he was not fiery, but in the moment, it was very much Eddie George's team. Not that Steve didn't step forward and do plenty of leading and have a huge role in winning, but Steve played off of Eddie much the way that Ryan Tannehill played off of Derrick Henry. There's a lot of similarities there. Steve McNair never blamed anybody. He was a bulletproof guy in terms of the organization's backing of him. There was no criticism ever coming of Steve McNair from anybody. At times, he deserved some. He didn't get any. And because of this, I think he had a keen understanding of this, which allowed him to take all the blame, whether he deserved it or not. Look, his whole career, he had insufficient receivers beyond Derek Mason and Drew Bennett. Yancey Thigpen, did some things for a little bit, and I don't blame the Titans for going and getting the best receiver available in 1998, but that didn't give enough help. It was a defensive team for most of his career, and he never complained, and he never called anything out. Guys could drop wide open passes and stuff, and he would talk about his bad throws or I didn't give guys enough of a chance or things like that. And this is another way that he won massive respect from his teammates. Never said anything bad about a missed block or a drop or anything like that. And so guys watched him do this and were like, hey, here's a guy, takes a beating, plays hurt, who is clutch in key moments for us. And he's got a lot of cause to say, hey, that one wasn't necessarily on me, or, we could really be adding to the roster in this area. And he never did that. And so he kind of served as a shield for everybody else. Which was outstanding. When he won the MVP, shared it with Peyton Manning. That was at the very beginning of 2024 for the 2023 season. He admitted that the night before, he knew it was coming out the next day, he rolled over scenarios in his head. There had been a lot of conversation about whether he was a real contender or not. And he rolled over scenarios in his head. He thought maybe the two games that he missed, he kind of concluded that the two games that he missed were going to cost him the MVP. But he won it. He tied for it. And Charlie Casserly, who was GM of the Texans at the time, said, if you gave me Peyton as A and McNair as B and Ty as C is what I would have taken. McNair said, I understand that personal achievement only comes through team success. I've always preached that. I've always believed in that. That's how I grew up. That's how I understand the game and being a team player. There's Steve McNair with a symbolic quote about how he always spread things around, spread credit around, absorbed the blame. And that's the kind of guy he was. I'm not looking to canonize him. But amongst his best qualities, certainly as a locker room guy, that was one. Join paulkuharsky.com. Retweet, thumbs up, subscribe on YouTube here if you're watching. Like, rate, review on Apple, Spotify, iHeart. Become a member of paulkuharsky.com. It's $7.50 a month. It really adds up to nothing. It's the cost of a fancy cocktail. It's the cost of a nice beer. It's the cost of a good cup of coffee. And season's coming fast. I'm going to dig in. I'm going to give you the best news, analysis, insight into what's going on with this team. I am plugged in. I am tied in. And you should support independent journalism on this team that's not going to cheerlead everything but tell you the truth about what's going on every level, good, bad, and indifferent. So maybe you've taken a pause and it's time to come. Maybe you're new here, you've been enjoying these podcasts, and now it's time to go a level deeper. But everybody in here who's regularly a part of this, who's a member, will vouch for the value. Did I agree with the split MVP in 2003? I really was surprised that he got it. I think there was Jeff Legwold, who had the Nashville vote. At that time, I think it was more set that there was kind of a voter in every NFL market. It is not strictly that way anymore. I think he did some campaigning and was effective. I don't know if that's the right thing or the wrong thing to do. But had Peyton Manning won that outright, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have felt like McNair got screwed. And if McNair had won it outright, I probably would have felt like Peyton Manning didn't get his due. So it was nice that it got split, and Steve certainly had a tremendous year. So hell of a thing for him to add to the resume, and certainly was worthy for sure. Let's talk about his injuries. Steve McNair, we know, was beat up constantly, and he won a good deal of his respect in the locker room, from other guys in the league, from media, from everybody, for playing through these injuries, sometimes to a degree that he probably shouldn't have, but it's what he did. His back cost him 5 games in '99. Sternum was really bad, and that's something that you can't, kind of hide or avoid. And that was really bad. Ankle, shoulder, you name it. In March 2001, I sat down to talk to him about the shoulder infection that confounded doctors. He did not really miss games at the end of the 2000 season, but after that, he just was in miserable pain. And he hadn't suffered the sternum injury yet, so we don't know how he would have compared it. But at the time, it was the worst thing that he had ever endured. And there were rumors all over town that he had nerve damage that was going to prevent him from ever playing again, and all kinds of stuff like that. And I remember talking to Jeff Fisher, talking to the PR director at the time, Robbie Boren, and saying, "You got to let me sit down with him. You got to let me explain what's gone on and where he is." And this rumor stuff is just snowballing, and they don't want it out there. And so eventually, once they knew that things had turned a corner, then he was going to be fine. I did, in fact, sit down with him. I think it was in the player lounge. What's up, bud? In the player lounge off the Titans locker room at the time, which is now just a piece of the Titans locker room, a little L shape that goes off the back of the Titans locker room. He thought, at its worst, he thought he would never throw again. At its worst, he thought he would never lift his throwing arm over his shoulder again. He was really scared. Here, I'm quoting him. "The pain was like no other. I don't think pain pills can stop infection pain. I tried. I was just constantly aching. Just like a toothache, it would never stop. Regardless of what position I put it in, it was constant aching. For a month, I was just in pure pain all around the shoulder. It was a frightening time in my life to see 2 or 3 specialists, and they were clueless." And so one of the things they did here was they washed 15 gallons of water through it to flush out the infection. McNair was, whatever sleep he was getting, it was in a recliner. He was not able to lay down flat. And he was a big Price is Right guy throughout his life. He became very familiar with the overnight TV schedule. This is 2001. TV was not at its peak yet, and he knew the overnight TV schedule. Matlock, Chips, Superman. He watched all of that stuff. And this guy was married to Michelle McNair, who was a nurse. She knew details of all of these injuries, and it was very helpful to him. But she also got him pretty well versed in the details of what was happening to his body. The game, so that press conference where he talked about winning the MVP was in Baltimore, right after the Titans got to Baltimore for a playoff game. And he had, going into that game, a left ankle sprain with a bone spur and a right calf strain. Well, at least he evened things out there. Had something on each side. He had a bad game. He threw for 159 yards, and 3 picks and a touchdown. But the Titans won despite that. 2017 at Baltimore. This was the year. The next game was the tough loss at New England in the freezing cold, where Drew Bennett dropped the good pass on 4th down. But here's the way McNair was talking about dealing with the ankle injury during that game. I am going to have periodically some scar tissue tear away that's going to sting me for a minute, but it'll settle down. The ankle was twisted up pretty good. This is a guy who went into games, and I'm sure other quarterbacks and other players have similar stuff. Maybe we got used to Steve, and look, nobody would be talking about this to this level, man. Jim Washburn, what's up? I'm broadcasting live. Come here for a second. What? I'm broadcasting live. Come here for a second. This is Jim Washburn, who coached Javon Curse and the Titans' great defensive line, one of the best position coaches in the history of the league, as far as I'm concerned. Say hello.
Paul. Hey, how you guys doing?
Great to see you. You gonna be here for a little bit?
Yeah, it's great. This guy's a champ. This guy's an ace.
I hope to
You're
find
a
you, but
Hall
if
of
not, I'll
Famer.
send you a text.
You know Jeremiah, my son?
Yeah.
Brady. That's all.
Awesome to see you.
This guy's got a great podcast, I bet. Is this on radio?
It'll be on audio later. It's live right now on YouTube and Twitter. Awesome to see you. How about that? Love that guy. Wide 9. That's right. I love Jim Washburn. Jim Washburn and Mike Munchak were foundational pieces about this very team that we're talking about. Unbelievable. I hope I get to catch up to him. Otherwise, I'll have to give him a call. He's here with his boys, one of whom was part of the Philadelphia Eagles staff that just won a Super Bowl. So where was I on Steve? So he had such knowledge of his body. He knows, this hurts right now, but it's scar tissue breaking up, and it's going to sting like hell now, but I can deal with it. Well, this is a guy who, when he was a kid, burnt his hand messing around with his brother and didn't want to tell his mother. He stuck his burnt hand in a jar of Vaseline. And I don't know how Vaseline is a cure for being burned, but for a young Steve McNair on the farm in Mississippi, that was medicine for a tough guy. Let me tell you about VIP Play, my other sponsor. It is the premier betting experience where everybody plays like a VIP. You see their logo right here. You need to go to VIP Play, sign up using the code PaulTN. And when you do, you get bonus. He lives out in Leapers Fork or something like that, Washburn. If you go sign up for VIP Play, use my code, you get a welcome bonus of $100 when you make a $5 bet or more, and then they'll give you an extra $50 for being one of my people. Now, let me tell you about what's going on with the big betting companies that are advertising on every game you watch and on ESPN constantly. They're all getting ready to screw the customer and put a 50-cent surcharge on every bet you make, which is ridiculous, right? They're already getting a nice cut of everything and doing quite well when you might miss on a bet. I know you're not missing on many. VIP Play is not going to do this. They're not going to be a 50-cent surcharge on their bets. You need to get ahead of this and take advantage of their phenomenal customer service and a great app. Join VIP Play now. Use code PaulTN, and instead of getting $100 when you make your first $5 bet, you'll get $150. It's a nice deal. They're great supporters of PaulKuharsky.com, and I hope you'll be great supporters of them. Appreciate your hooking them up. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 and over in Tennessee to bet. Here's a great example of Steve McNair's generosity. I was asking Blake Bedingfield about him yesterday when we were chatting about something else. I wrote a piece about 4 guys heading into their contract year for the Titans, and I got Bedingfield's opinion on them. You should go read that at paulkuharsky.com. And I asked him for a McNair story. He gave me this. Titans employees had a softball team, and McNair, he said, loved baseball and softball. He actually sponsored a men's traveling team out of Mississippi. One day he stopped. This is Blake talking. One day he stopped me in the building to ask about the team, and I said, "You should come out to a game and even play." And he said he would come out, but he couldn't play because it was in his contract. So he came out and he watched. And 2 days later, one of the trainers called Blake downstairs to 3 unopened boxes. There were bats and gloves and softballs, all from Nike. McNair had called his shoe sponsor to have them delivered for us. It's an awfully nice gesture from somebody who wasn't asked to do anything. And there are lots of stories of McNair doing stuff like this for people. But imagine, this is just a Titans team softball, just like any office. And, you know, I'm sure they scrounged together maybe some stuff from the equipment room that was heading out, but they're not getting Nike sponsored by any means. And McNair gets them 3 boxes full of great stuff that I'm sure enhanced their experience a great deal. Good Steve McNair tidbit there. All right, we hit this MVP stuff, so that is double. Accountability. Now, I talked about his accountability. You know, take the blame when he played poorly, for sure. You take the blame sometimes when he didn't play poorly. He got arrested in the spring of 2003 for DUI and possession of a handgun while under the influence. You might remember the police video was a big deal. It was all over the news. We saw it plenty. And he didn't have occasion. Wasn't in the public eye until a couple months later at his football camp. If I'm thinking correctly, it was up in Madison at Good Pasture. He was a Good Pasture guy for whatever reason. And so. You know, a bunch of us were up there. He didn't lock out the press by any means. And he saw a bunch of us up there and kind of walked by and said, "You guys want to talk to me?" And we were like, yeah. And stood there, faced the music, took the questions, and then talked to the kids at the camp. And he told the kids, "You can avoid a lot of trouble if you think from the time you wake up, am I going to make a good choice or a bad choice? It's up to you. I chose to do that. It was a bad choice, and now I'm paying the price." Pretty straightforward, pretty standard stuff. That's become a very popular thing for athletes, role models, to tell kids about making good choices. Steve McNair was really good with kids, and that's a really good message. And he also told them, and I thought this struck me at the time. I remember he told 8-year, campers as young as 8. You're not too young to set a goal for yourself. It's a good message. I remember a game in Baltimore. He had a 23-game streak with a touchdown pass. And Johnny Unitas had the record of 47. That's since been broken. Drew Brees has the record now. I don't remember how many. They had a number 19 for Unitas painted on the turf there. And it was very odd. The lead of my story was that the 19 painted on the turf. They had 4 guys standing around it like bodyguards, stood around it so nobody would walk across the number that was like kind of behind the bench over to the side, kind of facing the crowd. And McNair's streak of 23 ended that day. He threw 3 picks. He lost a fumble. He was only 21 of 43, 283 yards. Afterwards, as a quarterback, you hope good things happen. But when you go out and commit 3 interceptions, 2 fumbles on the center quarterback exchange, that's unprofessionalism. And you can't expect to go out there and win doing that. We got chances in the end, and I don't think I made the plays when I had to. That's my fault. The quarterback has to step up to the plate, and when his number is called, quarterback has to step up to the plate when his number is called, and I didn't do that. Now, I think quarterbacks do this today, not as well as he did there, but he's accountable with these kids over a stupid DUI and handgun charge. He's accountable after losing his touchdown streak and playing crappy in a big game in Baltimore. So I thought that was a impressive thing. Jennifer Rowe says, speaking from the obvious, didn't realize how good he was until he was gone. And somebody asking about where Washburn lives. Gary says, Jim is my neighbor. He lives in, I think that's pronounced Murray, Maury County. We go back to Midday 180 where we regularly had good laugh at how the extent of my county knowledge was Davidson and Williamson, maybe Rutherford. That has not grown a great deal, though Simon playing baseball spread around maybe a little more. Not really. I couldn't name counties on a map very well. KVB did love Washburn. And Dominican Sioux loved Washburn from their time together in Miami. Josh says, my first Titans game in person was the 2002 comeback against the Giants in the Meadowlands, and Steve instantly became my favorite Titan. I think I was actually in the crowd at that game. It's freezing. This kind of stuff I'm looking for. Gary said, I met Steve at a Kroger in Franklin. I was buying tickets at Ticketmaster for what would become the Music City Miracle game, and Steve was wiring money to his mom in Hattiesburg. Pretty cool. All right, now I've got like just a bunch of small vignettes, and maybe some of them get you going. I wrote a story at the Tennessean about what guys have to have once you have money in the NFL. You know, a lot of guys talked about cars and chains, and Steve had a chain, and the in the art, George Walker taking some great pictures for it, had a picture of Steve holding his chain, you know, away from his neck. But in the quotes from that, what Steve said was a suit. You have to have a tailored suit. So it was important to him to look good. Before the chain, the suit, clearly. Had a habit. Now, this got on my nerves later in his career, but he would go out and warm up early, and then a lot of people tried to help facilitate him finding spots to take a nap. So when they were away from what's now Nissan Stadium, they would try to find spots for him to doze. So this kind of symbolized what a cool cat he was, right? He wasn't trying to jam in any last-minute playbook or game plan stuff or catching any film or talking with teammates or talking with guys on the other side on the field or whatever. Between his early warm-up and the official warm-up that goes 50 minutes before the game, Steve McNair caught a nap. And kind of became part of his legend. The other thing, this is one that drove me crazy. I thought for how bad the Titans had wide receivers, he threw a ton to equipment men. Ton. Joey Barranco, who is still now the Titans' top equipment guy, great guy. I would bet that McNair threw more passes to Joey and Matt, some of those guys, than to some receivers at some stretches. And I just thought, like, wouldn't it be better for him to be throwing to actual receivers right now? Here's Vader Joss with a story on McNair's generosity. I had purchased the Titans number 9 jersey from eBay, and it was missing his name stitched in. I mailed it from California to the Titans equipment department, asking for it to be added. I guess there's a second half of that coming, but I'm guessing that they added it and that McNair signed it. I jumped on that too quick. Type fast, Vader. McNair had a way with words sometimes. He was asked about the Titans maybe being lackadaisical in a game, and he said, we don't have any lackadaisies. Maybe we ain't got no lackadaisies on this team. Something like that. It's great writing, really. Kind of twist on words. Very, very funny. John Glennon and I, he now of the Nashville Post, one of my best friends. And this might have been the first game we covered together. It was the 1990 team that played in Memphis. So John had just been hired to cover the Tennessee Oilers for the commercial appeal. And I think that their preseason finale was in Orlando against the Cowboys. I may have details wrong there. But at any rate, after their final preseason game, and I think they went 0-4 in the preseason, we asked Steve if he was shocked that they went winless in the preseason. He said, not so much shocked as amazed. And to this day, when something shocking happens, John Glennon and I say, not so much shocking as amazing. But we're not so much shocked as we are amazed. The second half of that Vader Jaws story. So he mailed it from California to the Titans equipment department, this jersey that didn't have McNair's name on it, asking for his name to be added, included a letter addressed to Steve. Imagine my surprise when I received the jersey mailed back to it, both it and my letter autographed by Steve, without me ever asking for his signature. Very cool. A smaller operation at that time. I wonder, how difficult it would be to get something like that. Todd Apple met both McNair and Volek in the same summer in the early 2000s, not at training camp, but at different softball games in Nashville. You can imagine Steve just mashing a softball. I've told this story a bunch, but as a favorite of mine, September 1998, going out to practice in Bellevue. This is the year the Titans operated out of a temporary facility behind a Baptist medical office where they were half in trailers, and the practice fields were out behind there. I think they're soccer fields now for youth soccer. He went out there, and the running backs area was first, and he took a bunch of pads, like long, narrow pads that were usually lined up on the ground for backs to tiptoe through or around. He stacked them up into a teepee, and he sat inside this teepee and made kind of Native American chanting sounds. And later, when we asked him about it, he said, I just had to get some thoughts together, get my mental process together. I didn't want any attention. That's why I covered myself up. I wanted to be alone, get away from all the guys. I think he was kind of half serious and half kidding, and he was just having some fun. But that was a striking moment for me. There's this game that the team played. I can't remember the time frame exactly, called, I think they called it Morta. It was spelled Morri. It's an Italian finger game. So if you and I are playing, we both throw between 1 and 5 fingers of our hand. And as we throw it, we guess between 2 and 10 in Italian how many fingers we're going to throw. And I think the first guy that gets to 4 wins. These guys were addicted to this game. It had been brought to the team by an assistant coach, Frank Novak. He was with the team from 89 to 94. So this was in the early years, beginning of Tennessee Oilers. I remember them playing it maybe at Vandy even. So that would have been 98. But Malcolm Floyd, a receiver, was a prominent player in this. Brad Hopkins, Eddie George, Steve McNair, very good at this. And so I did a story on this. It was a lot of fun. It's a memorable story for me. And McNair was a good player at this. McNair is one of those guys who's kind of good at everything, right? So he said, I'm so good, they're scouting me. They're having people in dorms taking pictures of me playing. So at one point, George lost 5 games of this in a row to McNair. And he said he went away and he came back and he revamped his whole game, and he's coming back with a new strategy that he called Shaolin. And McNair said, ninja stuff. He needs it. Ninja stuff. He needs it. He was addicted to The Price is Right and Matlock. I would have loved, it would have been such a great idea if I could have watched an episode of The Price is Right with him and seen how good he was at bidding. I think he would have been a great bidder. And I regret not trying to pursue that story, just watch an episode of The Price is Right with him in the player lounge and seeing how good he was at it. I think he loved him some Bob Barker. Never had a chance to ask him about Drew Carey as taking over. And the last thing I have written down on these kind of vignettes, Paul Noska, known as Haas, who was the long time equipment guy. Vrabel wound up firing him in part to make room for Joey to become the head guy, or they were going to lose Joey. But McNair for a long stretch, and McNair was really good at playing the long game with guys on pranks and jokes. He got Haas. He told Haas he wanted to change from 9 to 11. And he just had him convinced that he wanted to wear 11. And he deadpanned this thing. It was weeks at least. And Haas was like skeptical at the beginning, thought he was joking, thought he was messing around. And he just stuck with it, to the point that Haas was like checking with the league on what it would take to make the change. It was less complicated time to make the change than it is now. We know how many guys look into changing their number, and how you have to pay for the jerseys that are already made with your old number on it, and all of that stuff. I don't know what the details were back then. It wasn't as complicated as it is now, but it was still complicated, and it was a huge pain for Haas to even begin to have those conversations. And McNair finally let him off the hook and told him he was joking. He loved to joke around with these equipment guys in a big way. There's one other story that's coming to mind that I didn't write down. McNair would never, ever get on a scale for Steve Watterson. They had a running thing, and Watterson was always trying to find a way to get McNair's weight. I don't know if he had anything contractually about his weight or whatever, but they had standard weigh-ins at the beginning of camp and stuff like that, and they could never get McNair on a scale. And Tennessean did big season previews every year, and so it was an election year one year, and we did it kind of a election theme, and like certain guys were cabinet members, Javon Curse was Secretary of Defense and stuff like that. Secretary of Transportation, Heimerdinger, I think, we had a picture of him with cars and trucks and stuff. And so it was like McNair was campaigning. Maybe he was campaigning for MVP or whatever. And so we had set up that fans were coming in. We had set up in the bubble. This was for George Walker, our photographer. Fans were set up on bleachers like behind him, and he was just going to come in and pose at this podium quickly. So fans were behind there, with signs and stuff that looked like it was an election rally. McNair was going to come in and stand there for all of 5 minutes for George to get his picture. Watterson set up a scale. So where McNair was standing, he was standing on a scale. And they actually got his weight by setting him up for this photo shoot and having him stand on this scale. So we were innocuously part of Watterson figuring out a way to get Steve McNair's weight, which was a huge victory. Does Cam Ward's build and height remind me of McNair? I don't know McNair's. McNair is thicker, certainly 6'2", 230. Cam is 6'1", listed at so a little bit shorter. But he's not 230. He's 223. He's listed at a Pro Football Reference. So He could be. He's listed at 6'2", 223. So he's nowhere near as thick as Steve McNair at this stage of his career. And Steve is very country strong, for lack of a better word. I don't know if that's become kind of a insult of how a guy has gotten big or strong, but Steve was just kind of built that way. Not that he didn't do things to add to it. He was not a big weight room guy. Everybody knew that. That's why the lockout was kind of a funny thing, when the Titans had their contract dispute with him and when they were trying to force the Titans' hand in terms of getting him traded, where he ultimately went to Baltimore. Locking him out of the building was a very performative thing. Him going to the building was a very performative thing. And then the Titans locking him out of the building was a very performative thing. And then he won a grievance, obviously, that accelerated things, which was ultimately what was going to happen anyway, was that he was going to be somewhere else, because the Titans were fully in Vince Young mode, and Steve didn't want to be a backup at that stage. But Steve was no regular coming to the facility to lift during the offseason by any means. So what else? How would Steve compare to Big Ben? I don't have. I mean, Big Ben was taller for sure, no, but I mean, they're certainly in the ruggedness factor. They were similar in their ability to shed sacks, but Ben was 6'5", 240, so a different kind of size benefit, and I think Steve was certainly more slippery than Ben. Todd Apple, pretty funny here, says, if anyone can be close to country strong like Steve, it's going to be a 0-star recruit from West Columbia, Texas. I had a couple questions about Cam Ward. Wanted this to be all Steve McNair, but let's end here. The Titans have been chasing Steve McNair's successor since he left. The closest they've gotten was Ryan Tannehill, and he didn't play long enough. So, again, wins aren't a quarterback stat per se, but you get a sense of how good a franchise was by how the franchise did during the quarterback's term. Now, McNair was around for a long time. They won 76 games with him. They had a .580 winning percentage. Vince Young, who got a lot of his wins early, but he was around for 30 wins, 30 and 17. It's a nice winning percentage, 638. Tannehill, 619, 39 wins and 24 losses. But 39 wins by Tannehill, second most in the Titans era by a Titans quarterback, and Steve McNair, 76. So they haven't had anybody who could sustain a career, arrive young enough. We know the draft picks, none of them have panned out. None of them have gotten second contracts. And then, Tannehill, it was a good window. And he was the second best quarterback of the Titans era, but he got old. And when you get old, they ran out of time. His clock ticked out. And so they're chasing that. I mean, Mariota was 29 and 32. Now, that was a bad era. He was on some bad football teams. But another reason, out of the many reasons that Titans fans hold Steve McNair in such high regard, is because there hasn't been anybody else. There hasn't been anybody else that has taken the Titans to a Super Bowl, that's been in the MVP conversation, better yet, won one. And they just can't get there. And so now Cam Ward is the new hope. Cam Ward is the guy that the franchise, that the fan base hopes can be like Steve McNair was He's not going to have as much time. Nobody's ever going to have as much time as Steve McNair had. But nobody's probably coming into the league out of Alcorn State either. With NIL and the transfer portal, somebody starts at Alcorn State. It's comparable to starting at, it's better than starting at Immaculate Word, right? But you climb your way up to Washington State and to Miami now. And you climb a ladder in college to get yourself to the point that Cam Ward's at. And maybe there's a slow start for him, but I doubt it. I think Cam Ward's the starting quarterback week 1 of his rookie season. And Steve McNair wasn't starting quarterback week 1 till his 3rd season. So the path he took is not going to be a path that anybody else takes. But the success he had, Titans fans are always going to be hoping, wishing, praying that the Titans have somebody who comes and says, hey, that guy did what Steve McNair did. That guy did better than Steve McNair did. And we can have a conversation about the best quarterback in Titans history instead of saying, well, second to Steve. So I hope this has been a little bit of a trip down memory lane for you as we remember Steve McNair and some positive stuff. Though July 4th certainly brings up some really sad memories. Cheers to him. Cheers to all of you. Please eat at EDLEY'S BBQ, bet at VIP Play, and sign up at paulkuharsky.com. Become a member of the best independent journalism you're going to find on the Tennessee Titans. Happy 4th of July. Have a great weekend. I'll see you again soon. Don't block the box. And be sure, please, to lock your locks. Cheers.